shells were like turtle shells, you know. They were carapaces of thick, and they imprisoned. And they imprisoned very, authoritatively. And it's bad enough to find yourself in prison with one thick shell holding you in, but when you've got 7 of them, and the human being is trapped inside the last one, and around are all these spheres of darkness.
Were these spheres outside of the Platonic spheres, or?
These spheres would kind of parallel the Platonic spheres, except Plato saw them as more translucent than did the Gnostics. On that point, probably the greatest Gnostic philosopher of the West was Plotinus. But though an eminently mild and charitable man, his one essay where he really lets his polemics show is his treatise against the Gnostics. And that's Gnostics with a large G. And his main accusation of them is they can't see the beauty in the world. So there you get it. It's Platonic. There are these realms and these spheres, but they're more translucent in Plato. So the light that's outside it, of the sun in the image of the cave, shines through these. But in classic Gnosticism, these really are like turtle shells, you know. You're not going to get much light through those turtle shells. Neil, were you going to say something?
Yeah, do you think that some of this very negative view of the world arose because when Gnosticism came up in the first, perhaps the Christian Gnosticism in the first century or so after Christ, they were all expecting Christ to return, within a few years. They weren't expecting to go this long. And that's when everything started going downhill and everything started getting very negative and pessimistic.
Well, may have had something to do with that, though the Gnosticism I'm talking about now is not at all exclusively Christian. I mean, it's most of it is outside Christianity. I mean, some Jewish Gnosticism, but some Persian. Mani, for example, was from Persia, and so on. So that would not be
before Christ, this whole idea of Gnosticism.
Right. Though if we were to date it, why we would date it, I suppose, just about the turn of the 2 eras, BC to AD. Right in those 3 or 4 centuries. All right. Now, each of these 7 spheres has its archon, or its ruler, who is the warden of that particular sphere, but as we've already noticed, they're in the dark too. They don't know what they're doing, and therefore they behave like tyrants. And as a result of that, they've got the power, but they don't know what they're doing, a tyrannical control on it. So there was a lot of fatalism in human life, What chance? Now, let me just run a zip ahead on this point, saying, see, there's going to be hope. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here talking about this. Nobody would have listened to them. Okay, but we can see that this is going to be a very esoteric point of view rather than exoteric, meaning confined to the very few, because the way is so difficult. Now, when we think of that, while we might think of more morality, how we should live, but they would think of it again, always the emphasis on knowledge and knowing. You have to know so much in order to extricate yourself from this prison of this world that most people are just too trapped in the darkness, too sunk in the darkness for this gnosis to take hold of their lives. Physically, the fatalism occurs as the laws of nature, eventually decaying into decrepitude and then death. And psychologically, in enslavement, caught under the rule of the archons, we're just enslaved. Now, the archons not only create these dungeons that we're in, but they bar the way out of them. They really are not pleasant creatures. And a lot of the mythology of Gnosticism is how you're going to get by the guardians of the gates on each of these 7 realms. And the ways, we'll get into it when we get into the beliefs on soteriology or salvation, but let me anticipate there that you need to know the name of the archon. And this is going to be a guarded, efficacious knowledge, but a lot depends on that. And let me just remind you that in the New Testament, the emphasis on the name of Jesus, in this name, when Constantine was converted and on his cross in the Roman Empire, in hic signo, in this sign. Oh, that was a sign, wasn't it? There wasn't the name. Yeah. But anyway, we get the name. Very important. All right. We've had theology, cosmology. Now we come to the human self, anthropology. Now, the anthropology consists, the human self consists of 3 components. The 3 actually are working here with body, soul, and spirit. But note, here, soul in Christianity tends to be a good word, but in Gnosticism, it's linked with body. Soul and body are trapped. Spirit is the only hope. Spirit is the spark. Spirit is the spark of the God who's so far removed from all this, all beyond that. But, herein lies the salvation. There is that spark within us, and that's what some Gnostics, like the Christians, are going to pick up on that and really run with it. But the soul is trapped and confused and in darkness. The word for spirit, the Greek word, which was used in Christian Gnosticism, was pneuma, P-N-E-U-M-A. But this pneuma, or spirit, is, as we've seen, imprisoned, it's trapped, it's confused, it's numb, it's sometimes imagery is drunk, it's asleep, and they all add up to one thing, namely ignorance. Ignorance. Again, the opposite of knowledge. We come back to this central abiding theme that whereas in Orthodox Christianity, it's the will, whether the will is good or bad, fallen or not. But in Gnosticism, and here again the convergence with Asia is so clear. In Buddhism, it's not that we're evil, that we're perverted, but we're ignorant. We're ignorant.